Welcome, everyone. We'll give folks just another minute or two to dial in. Good to see some familiar faces on the line. Christina, shall we go ahead and get started, recognizing that folks may trickle in as we go?
Please do.
Great. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Mike McCrellis, Executive Director at Impact Frontiers, and I'm so pleased to be joined by Christina Curtin from the CFA Society of the United Kingdom. Because one of the things that I'm most excited about that's happened in the last few years is the professionalization of our space as reflected in the creation of a certificate in impact investing facilitated and created by the CFA Society of the United Kingdom. It's something that we've been really pleased and honored to have the opportunity to contribute to through the chapters on impact management and investor contribution that we had the opportunity to co-author, and in general have just been so pleased to see something that I've had so many like hallway conversations with people where you would say like, boy, wouldn't it be great if there were like just a certificate where you could learn this stuff? And you'll know that we've really grown up as a sector when there's a CFA in impact investing. And lo and behold, here comes CFA Society of the UK leading the way. So, I've chatted with Christina about ways that, well, if you are not on mute, if you could kindly mute. Thanks very much. So we'll, what Christina and I will, talk about ways this, is similar and different than Impact Frontiers cohorts, and we'll have some back and forth later on. But really what we're hoping to do here is to just let the CFA Society shine and share all of the great work that they've been doing on this certificate with all of you. I will say, so that Christina knows who all is in the room, we'd be very grateful if you could just add your organizational name next to your personal name in the participant list. We're not too big of a group, so please feel free as we're going to chime in with questions in the chat, and then, I think the presentation probably won't be too long. It's great to see many of you on video already. Please feel free to just turn on your videos and pop in with questions during or after, and we'll make it as conversational as possible. So with that, I will pass it over to Christina. Christina, would you like to introduce yourself? And I'm also, yes. We should give you a moment to also share your screen if you like.
Well, certainly. So thank you so much, Peter and Mike, for inviting us to talk to your network. We're absolutely delighted to be able to meet you all today and to tell you a bit about the CFA UK Certificate in Impact Investing. My name is Christina Curtin. I'm Director of Education at CFA UK. So my remit really is, as you would think, to deliver and maintain our existing qualifications and really identify any skills gaps in the market. And it's in that context, really, that we developed our certificate in impact investing. So I do have some slides to share with you. There are a number, but it will be a fairly quick kind of presentation. So hopefully you are able to see the first slide. Yes, no, probably not. Bear with me. Let me start again. Okay, you can see that now, I think.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So what I wanted to do today with you is just give an overview of who we are at CFA UK, what we do. Talk about really our thinking around why we decided to develop our certificate in impact investing. Give you some detail about what's in the curriculum and how we deliver that as a qualification and an assessment. Some of what we feel are unique benefits and features of the qualification, and then, you know, some feedback from candidates who've actually taken the qualification and passed the exam. So in brief, CFA UK is a local society in the UK of CFA Institute. We're essentially the feet on the ground to serve CFA Institute members in the UK. But long before we became a society, we've actually been in existence since 1955. And today we are a really dynamic community of over 12,000 investment professionals in the space. Given that we are a local society of CFA Institute, we're very fortunate to be very well connected into a worldwide network, collaborating with CFA Institute and other global local societies. But at our core, I think our objective has always been to expand knowledge, develop skills, and make new connections for investment professionals. And today that's actually truer than ever, and it's really enshrined in our brand promise, which is we grow talent. Our mission is to educate, connect, and inspire the investment community to build a sustainable future. And we do that in a number of ways. We do that through our education piece in terms of qualifications and our professional learning offer. We do it through our membership and networking opportunities. We do it through our member communities, for example, the work that our sustainability community does, and obviously events and mentoring. And I wanted to touch on volunteering in a little bit more detail. We are a small society. It's probably about 35 to 40 of us. And in the education team, there's probably about 10 of us. None of us are subject matter experts. And so we cannot actually deliver or develop qualifications without an army of volunteers. And they do huge amounts of work on our panel in terms of advising us on the syllabus. The panel members, such as Mike, will overview the authors in guiding them about what the content needs to be in the learning materials. And the final piece that they do for us is obviously they check, you know, the assessment, that it's valid, that it's robust, that, you know, it's testing what we need to test. So all of those things are done by practitioners for practitioners. And Mike, we've had the pleasure of working with Mike through Impact Frontiers for the last 2 years. Mike's been involved with us since inception as an author and now a panel member and author. And I think, Mike, you can attest to the huge amount of work across the piece that's gone into actually getting this qualification together and launching it. And the journey doesn't stop there because we update on a yearly basis. It's a fast-moving space. And we're currently in the throes of working on, you know, the second edition or version of the qualification. So thanks very much to Mike and the support that you've given. It's truly appreciated. In terms of our qualifications offer, we have our core investment management certificate. We've had that, we'll be celebrating 30 years this year. It's recognised by the financial regulator in the UK for meeting the required exam standards in the space. We started our sustainability journey back in 2018 by developing our certificate in ESG investing, which we launched in 2019. And it was tremendously successful. There was obviously global demand. And I think on reflection, we felt that the global CFA Institute, with its infrastructure and networks, would be much better placed to service that demand. And so we transitioned over the certificate in ESG investing to the Institute just a couple of years ago, but it's still going incredibly strong. We launched our certificate in climate and investing in 2022. And most recently, of course, just earlier this year, we formally launched the certificate in impact investing, although we did hold pilot examinations in November 2023 to test the qualification and the assessment. And we held pilot examinations for about 200 candidates. So it has been robustly tested. In terms of, our thinking around the need for a qualification in this space, in a general context, I think we were very much aware that there was growing momentum towards sustainable investing generally, driven by regulation, policy, and investor demand. And we also saw that there was mounting support and recognition that our financial systems and the investment management sector in particular have a crucial role to play in creating a fairer and more sustainable society and in delivering positive societal outcomes. We were cognizant of the GIN sizing of the market at 1.164 trillion in their 22 report. And we also saw that consumer demand for sustainable products and services was growing. And effectively, considering impact increasingly is seen as just good investing. So with that in mind, and working with our small army of volunteers, as I've mentioned, we've developed out a qualification that covers 6 core areas. So, and I don't think there'll be any surprises there in terms of what you see. So obviously there's the introductory chapter. We talk about investment philosophy, strategy, and implementation. We then delve into asset classes and products in both private and public markets. We obviously cover impact investing, sourcing and due diligence, impact measurement, management, monitoring and reporting, and of course, investor contribution and stewardship. So those are the key 6 topics of the curriculum. And taking a deeper dive, but I won't go into detail across all of the topics, this is what the subtopics look like in terms of what candidates will learn if they undertake the qualification. So as I said, I won't dwell on this too much, but I did want to talk about our approach to impact investing and our definition. So we take as our starting point the GIN definition, which will obviously include intentionality and obviously measurement, management and reporting. But we're also conscious that for a broad number of impact investing, investor contribution is also a very important piece. When we look at impact investing across the materials, the lens that we take is that obviously it's a spectrum from finance first to impact first and many points in between. So it's not prescriptive at all. We recognize that there's a spectrum and there's a spectrum of approaches. And that's the lens that we apply across the learning materials. In terms of what that actually equates to, the exam, the qualification registration costs £495, and for that's an exam registration. So once you register, you have a year to take the exam, and you get access to the learning materials that support that curriculum online. So you can view online or you can download if you're working offline. Once you have studied the materials, and we recommend around about 130 hours, that's for somebody who's completely new to impact. If you have an existing knowledge or a deep knowledge, we'd expect those study hours to be significantly less. Once you've studied the materials and you feel ready to schedule your examination, you can do that. And you'll be assessed for 1 hour and 30 minutes with 65 questions that are delivered via computer-based testing. They're multiple choice questions and it's graded pass or fail. And you can see in terms of the testing specification there, the number of questions you would likely see in your exam. So obviously there's a clear focus on impact investment philosophy, strategy and implementation, as well as impact measurement, management, monitoring and reporting. And that sort of testing specification really reflects the content that's covered in the materials in terms of scale, but it's also influenced by the panel view, the practitioner view about what the core areas are that we should be testing and to what extent we should be testing them. In terms of who this qualification is for, it really is broad brush foundational. So it's not going to tell you everything that you need to know about impact, and it's not intended to. So with that in mind, it is focused on a broad target audience, portfolio managers, fund managers, those working in sales and distribution or compliance or consulting. It just will give you the solid foundations that you need to start that impact journey. There aren't any formal entry criteria, but we do expect candidates to have a fairly solid understanding of the investment decision-making criteria, because we are not the investment decision-making process. We're not going to teach candidates, what a derivative is, or what an equity is, or the difference between private and public markets. We expect candidates to have that base knowledge. What the learning materials will give candidates is an understanding of how to integrate impact considerations across that investment decision-making chain. In terms of some of the unique benefits and features, the materials that we produce are specifically produced to match the content of the learning outcomes. And it is a two-way process between discussions with panel members and authors about the intended depth and breadth of a learning outcome, to ensure that there's sufficient coverage of that in the materials that we can then test candidates on. As I've said, it is written by industry practitioners for industry practitioners. All of our authors are in practice. And what we try to get our authors to do is not to give necessarily a house view, but a broader view, because our materials aren't intended to be prescriptive at all. I should add that in terms of the materials, each topic or chapter has a number of end of chapter self-assessment questions, just to test your learning that you've assimilated the information or the key points of that chapter. And we also have a specimen paper that we produce, where you can see what your exam might look like and what you'll be tested on. As I've said, once you register, you can access the materials immediately. You have a year in which to take the exam. In terms of testing, if you are in the UK, you've got two options. You can test at a test centre, or you can test via remote proctoring. If you're an international candidate, you will need to, you'll only be able to test by remote proctoring. But I would say that that remote proctoring offer is pretty much 24/7 year round. If you wanted to book an exam at 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're entirely at liberty to do that. So that's the sort of content piece. And I thought I would share with you some feedback from some candidates that we had. So I'll let you look at this for a couple of minutes to have a look. And then I thought I'd just share with you a small number of the firms who actually are working with us and putting through candidates through the certificate in impact investing. I think for the pilot, we had something like 200 candidates across, I want to say, 80 different firms. So we are seeing, good take up and recognition of the qualification. And as I said, we're working on version 2, and we're very excited about the changes that we're implementing in version 2. But I'll finish the presentation there and ask if there are any questions.
I can go.
Be brave.
Is it okay?
We can hear you.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much. It's a great presentation, and so glad to hear of this. Also, really excited to see all familiar faces and names. It's always good to be at the Impact Frontiers webinars. My name is Sasha Zeva. I'm a Director of Strategic Learning and Impact at the Rockefeller Foundation. And my background is actually very much impact measurement, mostly in global public health, now kind of broadening to food, agriculture, climate themes. And I come into impact investing without any financial background. And my question is actually, is there a reverse certificate? So almost like a certificate, like a finance certificate for those who've been working in impact? Because you were kind of saying public and private markets, I think I figured out. I'm not still sure what a derivative is.
Yeah.
Is there something that's kind of had that you need less of a finance background to come into that has some background in?
Definitely. I mean, we obviously have the investment management certificate, but that might be a tad too much because it's grounded in UK regulation, taxation, etc. It's got the practice piece, but it's also got obviously the local component. But what I would suggest is the CFA Institute have a course called Investment Foundations. So I'll bore you with the details. So the CFA UK certificates are generally at a level 4. We're regulated in the UK by the education regulator. Level 4 is all about testing, obviously knowledge, but analysis. You're able cognitively to analyse, and our assessment does that. Level 3 is knowledge and understanding. So the investment foundations certificate that the Institute offers is similarly, it's a professional learning certificate. So it's an online course, you access the materials, and it's obviously global because it's offered by CFA Institute. And there is an online assessment that you need to complete. You won't get a formal qualification certificate, but you will get a professional learning certificate to evidence that you've completed that online assessment. And I think that's a very good starting point because it will tell you all the basics that you need to know. And you can go through it quite quickly rather than taking, formally the IMC. So I think that would be my starting point as advice for you. It's a very, very good professional learning piece, investment foundations.
Great, thank you so much. And CIFA, CIFA?
Oh, sorry, the CFA Institute, the Chartered
CFA
Financial Analysts Institute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
They're
No,
actually based out of Virginia in the US, but obviously they're global.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's really helpful. Yeah, and it might kind of spread the word among the evaluators and impact measurement professionals who are interested in coming into the space and kind of need to understand a little bit better kind of what the finance space looks like. Thank you.
I can share one reflection if that's helpful, Christian. And hi, Sasha. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining. I mean, I will say that having worked on the impact management chapters, but having read now the other chapters, I learned quite a lot about different aspects of the market, different regulatory regimes, just from reading those other chapters. And I think most of the authors would feel the same way, that none of us could have written the whole thing. All of us learned from reading the other chapters. And so I do agree with what Christina said, that if you were seeking a general introduction to the investment universe, the resources that Christina said will be helpful. That said, I don't know, you can tell me, Christine, if I'm talking out of turn. You could do worse. I mean, there is some introductory material,
I think you certainly could. I get what you're saying, Mike. I think you could read through it, and you could, if you weren't essentially sure some of the terminology, you could look it up quite quickly and upskill that way rather than doing a pre-course. Absolutely, because it's not. I was saying to Peter earlier, our certificate in climate investing is pretty technical, and you do need that solid grounding. Impact, the measurement management piece is obviously technical, but I think it's much more philosophical in terms of the discussions that you have around what is the impact and how do you measure it effectively. So I think you're right, Mike. You needn't necessarily do a pre-course. You could actually upskill yourself through further reading, through as you study the curriculum.
Can I come in with a question, please? Yes, hi. My name is Simon Joncourt. I work as a project manager at CEWAS. CEWAS is the Center for Entrepreneurship in Water and Sanitation. And as you might guess from the name, we work with what we call impact investors in the water and sanitation space, or WASH in general. That is water and sanitation and hygiene. Now, what we call impact investors. So I'm just wondering if what we call impact investors is the same thing as you would call impact investors, right? Because we work in a sector where the margins are extremely small, extremely slim, and most of the impact investors that we work with are actually foundations that are usually their main preoccupation is capital preservation, right? So they are not really. So the most of the enterprises that we work with are not yet at a stage where they can sort of be really the classic investee for an impact investor. Nonetheless, there are forward-thinking foundations that think, okay, let's find new ways to pump money into that sector. And maybe we call it impact investment, but it might not qualify exactly as what you guys would call impact investment. But so just seizing the opportunity that there are very little participants, where do you see that to what degree is that that definition of impact investor sort of exclusive to what we are doing in our little water world? Do you think it would still make sense, or is that just two different levels?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Mike, but you can certainly guide me if I go wrong. So I think our view in the materials, and we recognise that the view that we set out in the materials, we recognise there's a broad spectrum. We recognise that the definition that we take isn't necessarily one that's matched by regulators. So if you look at SFDR and Article 9, you know, an impact investment could meet those criteria, but from our point of view, wouldn't necessarily be an impact investment if it doesn't talk about investor contribution. So I think that's our view, but we recognise that it's not one size fits all, and it's not a prescriptive approach, but that's how the materials, with the consensus of the panel, that's where we've ended up in terms of that is what an impact investment is. We recognise that, you know, it may be a finance first approach in terms of impact, but there is still an impact. It's still measurable. There's intentionality and there's some contribution there. So that would be my sense, Mike, but I'd love your views.
Yeah, I mean, I would just share that I personally come from a similar sort of corner of the market, more in sustainable agriculture, but very much in the nonprofit social investment space. And my reading of the materials is that they're crafted very much to be inclusive of that element, that part of the spectrum.
Thanks a lot.
And I see we have a question also from Marie at FinDev Canada. Hi, Marie. Marie, would you like to just pop off mute and share your question?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me properly?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Just wondering, I heard there's going to be a second version of the certificate. So just wondering what the differences are going to be. And when it will come out, sorry.
Sure. So I can talk at the general level, and then Mike, you might want to talk about the areas that you cover. So when we develop our qualifications and materials, our timeline is actually quite tight. It may not sound it, but you're generally looking at a year once you have the syllabus signed off to develop out the materials. It is, I have to say, you know, blood, sweat and tears for everybody involved, a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. But we're conscious of the timeline, and our approach is it's got to be good. It's got to be robust, but it doesn't have to be perfect, because that's part of the pilot process in terms of testing. So the feedback that we got from candidates from the pilot, we aim for about, you know, one of our KPIs is that we want feedback on the materials, and we want 65% of candidates to say they're good or very good. And actually for impact, it was 75%. And taking into account what kind of Mike alluded to earlier, every individual candidate will have their own preferences dependent on their job role about where they would have liked to have seen more content, less content that they might not see applicable to them needing to know. So from the candidate's perspective, it's a subjective rating. That's why we set it at 65%. But so the materials were very good. That said, we know at CFA UK, in, you know, talking to panel members and authors, there are things that we might have wanted to put in the materials or shape them in a different way that we didn't get around to doing. So inevitably in the first version, there is some duplication, and the panel have thought quite deeply about how we remove that duplication and fit into, I was saying, you know, what you've got is a linear curriculum, but some of the processes that you're undertaking aren't linear. And so it's how you represent that best in a curriculum. So we have, I mean, the topic one will stay the same. We have restructured some of the topics so that they go more naturally from concepts to asset classes to implementation. And then we talk about, we've got a stronger focus this time round on impact reporting. And we've moved investor contribution engagement to where it will more naturally sit. So and of course the content will be updated, and we are constantly looking to, you know, include more case studies that are more representative of the different geographies and, you know, emerging markets, developed markets, private markets, public markets. And so that's constantly under review. So at the moment, the materials are around 350 pages. We would expect probably they would increase, but not, we've got a limit because it needs to be accessible. It's foundational. So I think you would probably see that increase slightly for version 2. But Mike, do you want to talk about your pieces that you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just share. So I've specifically been working on the impact measurement and management chapter, which now includes investor contribution. Between version 1 and version 2, I don't believe that the concepts covered will change. However, I will, in full disclosure, impact measurement is, somewhere between an art and a science. Everybody can speculate where they would put impact measurement in that spectrum. But it's not completely a science yet in its application. And it's been hard. It was hard to write the chapter in a way that it could be tested via multiple choice questions, where three answers were clearly wrong and one question was clearly right. It was a bit of a more of a discursive presentation of the material in chapter 5. And so one of the things that we're seeking to do in the next version 2, is to simplify, codify, make it very easily testable in a multiple choice approach for foundational learners. So that's one of the changes that we're seeking to make. Christine, would you say that's fair to say?
Yeah, definitely the case. And I think we've taken on feedback. I mean, it's really interesting. I was saying to Mike earlier, we meet quite often with candidates, just through our networking and stakeholder outreach, we meet with candidates who've taken the certificate. And it's fantastic to hear. I met with a lady earlier this week who was at BlackRock when she took the certificate, is now moving on somewhere else. But she said the materials themselves are excellent. That said, we know there's always scope for improvement, and she's on version 1, and she said there was some duplication, lots of ideas that we could include, particularly around case studies and strengthening, what it means to be a bondholder in terms of engagement and influence. And things like that. So we're constantly getting feedback on the qualification. A lot of it will go into version 2, but it's an ongoing yearly process where we hone and refine the content that's in there.
Thank you. And when will version 2 be available to sign up for?
So the examination year for impact, so we launched the version 1 examinations openly from the 1st of March. So it'll be the 1st of March to the end of February. And then version 2 exams kick in on the 1st of March next year. So the materials, we're hoping to have them published by December. And I think we're on track to do that. We do publish in hard copy if additionally candidates wanted to purchase hard copy. But as I said, the registration price includes soft copy access. So we're hoping that'll be ready in December. And I think we're fairly on track with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Let's see, are there any other? Oh, Sasha? I love having Sasha at these things because she always raises her hand. She's like the dream webinar participant.
I was just wondering what the overlap, because you mentioned the climate finance certificate, and there's clearly some overlap, right, with investing in climate finance. Could you talk a little bit more about what that overlap is and how you thought about it?
I think it's an interesting question. And I think that for climate, we cover off, obviously, the different bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, green bonds, approaches to investing. And whilst those funds or those investment products are aligned to a climate solution, I don't think necessarily there is intentionality there, but how it's measured is with an impact approach. So, and we don't talk about impact investing at all in the climate. It's a different methodology and it's a different approach for it to be classed as an impact investment. Although there is some, as you say, overlap in the types of products or funds that investors can invest in to enable a climate solution. But then it's not through an impact lens necessarily, I would say.
And I'll just say that one of the instructions that was given to me by the CFA Society was not to duplicate what's in the climate certificate, because we don't want to sell the same content with two labels. So I actually read the climate certificate and then really tried to steer clear, unless it was absolutely necessary, foundational information, not to duplicate. So as a result, you won't find much in the impact measurement chapter about like greenhouse gas measurement methodologies, for instance, or debates about mitigation or adaptation, stuff like that.
And I think one of the things that we have in the qualification is obviously the business models that support impact investing in terms of, impact centered, impact through operations, subsidy, cross-subsidy, profit donation, different business models that you can use to develop impact investing approaches. And the different range of products that simply aren't replicated in the CCI materials that you have in terms of your blended products and your catalytic capital.
Are there other questions that folks have? I see lots of Gianluca, Mahak, Samantha, Simon, Ihan, lots of familiar names on the call. Happy to answer any other questions that you guys have.
This is Adwa. I have a question.
Oh, Antoine.
With the pass-fail, if candidates fail, how soon can they reapply to take the test over again?
So if candidates fail, I think you obviously don't pay the bundle price again, you just pay the exam component. And I think you have to wait 3 working days, but then you can go in and schedule again, but you have to wait 3 working days. So you can do it quite quickly. And in terms of capacity, in terms of scheduling slots, I rarely hear of any problems with capacity in terms of the remote proctoring option, because you can, as I say, you can schedule it 24 hours a day.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, did you want to talk about the differences between, the qualification and the Fantastics program that Impact Frontiers offer?
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to share. And then I'll offer a concluding thought. In terms of the differences between the CFA certificate and the Impact Frontiers program, obviously, the CFA certificate is much broader. Introduction to Impact Investing provides coverage of the market sizing, regulatory aspects, overview of different asset classes, and so forth. So I would say the content is broader coverage, and it's more crafted for the individual learner, whereas the Impact Frontiers cohorts are really crafted to accompany an organization through a process of organizational change in how it measures and manages and makes decisions based in part on impact. So I do see them as very, very complementary in that regard. And I'm really enthusiastic about both. And then the closing comment that I would offer is just to underline what Christina said at the beginning, which is that it really is a labor of love for all of us authors and panelists. Many of them are volunteering their time entirely on the side of their day job because it's something they believe in and have wanted to see in the sector for a long time. And I think it's also, from what I've heard, a labor of love also among the learners, and would encourage any of you who are thinking about participating to go ahead and take the plunge, because as authors and as panelists, we really take the feedback seriously. We don't think that we have all the answers. We hope that the version 1 and version 2 are good, but we really are constructing it as a process of the sector as a whole, and value that feedback, and consider the learners part of the community that's building their certificate. So with that, we'd really encourage all of you to consider taking it yourself, to share with others in your organization. I've heard from folks who are very early career professionals who wanted to dip their toes in the water and found it useful for that. I've spoken to people who spent their careers at pension funds and now are sort of interested in impact investing, but very senior professionals, and found it useful from that perspective. So this is my shameless plug for the great work that certificate that Christina and her team have been leading. Yeah.
I'll add another couple of shameless plugs as well, Mike. And when I was talking to Mike about, the year-long program that Impact Frontiers offer around, and it's on a team basis and it's sponsored by the organisation, and it's a fantastic program, and individuals learn about how you can start embedding impacts in your organisation. But there's a change piece there, and I think, having developed out the certificate in ESG investing some years ago, when we looked at the change that was required, at the time you kind of had a triangle and you had your ESG experts at the top, and they were cascading down this foundational knowledge. And I think the organizational change bit there is supported around, not necessarily, yes, your experts at the top of the triangle in impact can help cascade that information, and they will no doubt need to do with key teams. But there's a broader piece along the bottom of the pyramid about, do your kind of client relationship team understand concepts? Does the compliance team understand concepts, from a regulatory perspective? There's a broader brush education piece, and I think that certificate, because you're taking your own time when you want, and it gives that broad piece, I think that could be a great tool in enabling that broader knowledge sharing across the organisation to help enable that organisational change that we would want to see in terms of impact investing. And I think from my perspective, somebody who's developed out the qualifications is, we do work with a whole range of subject matter experts on the panel. We are just incredibly lucky that we've got people so committed and passionate to moving the needle on this. But I think what's always interesting, and Mike will probably agree, is that there is no one size fits all, but we have to come to agreement as a panel and have consensus about how deep and how far we go. And I think those conversations are always interesting. And of course, the space doesn't sit still. So often we're all revisiting conversations that we had last year in light of how the space has moved. I think that's fascinating. And I think that it's a two-way dialogue as well from panel members and authors to make sure that we get the content right. And of course the assessment piece. But I think it's incredibly rewarding to have those discussions, and we're so grateful to have such great people contributing to it. What I was also going to say, Mike, was the other thing was if you or your firm are interested in moving forwards with potentially taking the qualification, if you've got you might have a number of people in your firm that might be interested in taking it, we could potentially offer a complimentary registration for your firm to test it, to see the quality, and see it actually, will that give you the value that you're seeking, so that you could then roll it out in your firm. We'll come back to you on that. We'll give Mike and Peter the details, and we'll give you the contact details if that was something that you wanted to participate in. Praneet is on call at the moment. He's our Director of Outreach, and he'd be the person to follow up with and conversations on that. And similarly, if you wanted in-firm kind of presentations on impact, he and his team would be very more than happy to deliver that for you in whatever way you wanted.
So yeah, with that, we will, with permission, we've recorded the webinar. We'll share the video with all of you, and also on more publicly, and with folks who registered, but for instance, are in Asia and are quite rightly asleep right now, but are interested in participating from wherever they are in the world. In the meantime, just want to thank Christina and Praneet for their leadership in this area and for making time available. And we will include some details about possible next steps for all of you in the follow-ups.
Thank you so
John
much.
Luca, there's one last question from John Luca. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry to postpone the end of the
Right.
meeting for the others as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Christina, for the presentation. My question is brief, and it's about partnership and collaboration opportunities. Have you thought about partnering with some university, or like what are the plans there?
I'll let Praneet answer that one. Or I can take a stab at it, Praneet, if you want me to.
No, I'm happy to sort of give that a go. So we typically do work with universities, but predominantly that's been around our flagship qualification, the investment management certificate. We haven't as yet worked with universities around the impact investing certificate, though. I think that's something that we would be very interested to do, mind you. And I think if you had any specific ideas around that, then be happy to have a conversation with you. And, you know, I see that you're from Impact Europe, and if you feel that there's something there that you'd like to explore, then you know, I'd be glad to do that. So yeah, all ideas welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Praneeth. And I'll definitely have a second thought about it internally and then reach out in case we
Thank
can
you.
Thanks. Brainstorm.
That would be great. Thank you, Gianluca.
Great. Well, with that, many thanks to Christina and to Praneeth and to all of you for joining. And hope this is the beginning of some good learning experiences. And wishing you all the best for the rest of your days.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Peter and Mike, for inviting us, and lovely to meet you all today. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.